Okay, so I want to welcome you all to the Baldoyle Community Hall. I'm Heidi, the manager of the centre here, and we're holding this because we had heard from a lot of people that we'd interviewed that they were very confused about the referendums. So we've invited two people who have very kindly come in their own time, volunteers, to explain to us what their why they're voting yes or no. So we have Suzanne Young from the Green Party, and we have Sandra Adam from the Countess.ie. So thank you so much, ladies, for coming to us this evening. This is being recorded, so people can download it. There's a QR code on our website page, and we'll record the talks, but then we'll stop it during the question time. Right, so I'm just going to read out what the changes are in the referendums that we're going to be voting on. So in Article 41.1.1, it currently says, the state recognises the family as the natural primary and fundamental unit group of society and as a moral institution possessing inalienable and imprescriptible rights, antecedent and superior to all positive law. And what they want to do is add a little piece into that. So after it says state recognises the family, it wants to put in whether founded on marriage or on other durable relationships. And the rest would be the same. The other bit then is Article 41.3.1. The state pledges itself to guard with special care the institution of marriage on which the family is founded and to protect it against attack. So they want to remove or delete the section on which the family is founded. So it would say the state pledges itself to guard with special care the institution of marriage and to protect it against attack. Okay, so those are the two things that are being proposed. Small, but obviously they're important to a lot of different people. And I just wanted to mention, for anyone who's unfamiliar with our structures, the Constitution doesn't actually make any laws, it doesn't change anything, but it allows laws to be made. So the government can't change the Constitution. They can write laws, they can write legislation, but they're not allowed to change the Constitution. Our Constitution has quite a lot of detail in it, which means that we have to keep going to the public to make any changes. So that's where the Constitution sits in Irish life, if you like. So it is important what words are in there, because it limits laws that may or may not be made after it. So whatever laws you'd like to bring in, if it contradicts the Constitution or anything in it, if it can be proven to be against the Constitution, you can't, that law falls apart, it doesn't exist. So, let me see, was there anything else? 10 minutes I'm going to give each speaker. We'll be here again on Thursday morning at 11 o'clock. And also, everybody please respect each other's views. So this is about informing. We're not trying to win a competition here, we're not trying to insist that everybody leaves the room voting one way or another. There's going to be a person on top. It's respect for each person's views, because that's how they feel about this amendment. And then I would ask that, well, nobody from the floor feels that they also need to make a speech. The speeches are for our speakers. They're going to be the people speaking. If everyone else could just restrict it to questions to our speakers, and then our speakers will address your questions. That's it. So Matt on the floor, that's right.
Are we going to address the other amendment as well? Because that's just the family. There's the second one on care. That's why I'm here.
The care amendment.
I don't understand that one.
Thank you for that. Yes, right, okay. So the care amendment is talking about removing sections. So Article 41.2.1 says, in particular, the state recognises that by her life within the home, woman gives to the state a support without which the common good cannot be achieved. And then 41.2.2 says, the state shall therefore endeavour to ensure that mothers shall not be obliged by economic necessity to engage in labour to the neglect of their duties in the home. So the proposal here is to delete both of those articles and insert the following instead. The state recognises that the provision of care by members of a family to one another by reason of the bonds that exist among them gives to society a support without which the common good cannot be achieved, and shall strive to support such provision. So that's what it was. Take out the two bits that are there and put that in instead. Okay, so thank you for that.
Okay.
Right, the last piece then is to decide who's going first. So I have first and second written on a piece of paper at the same time. You can, if I put them close together, you can choose either one.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So who has first?
I'm going first.
Great. So Sandra
Okay.
Adams. Thank you very much.
Okay. Right. Just get myself together.
Right.
So this X marks the spot, yes?
Yeah.
That's good.
That's it.
Okay, hello, hi. Thank you very much for coming out. My name is Sandra Adams. I'm a spokeswoman with an organisation called the Countess. And we advocate on behalf of women and girls and to ensure adequate safeguarding. So we're advocating for a no on both of the proposed amendments. So I'll just go through them briefly with you. So you've probably all received your, well, I hope you've all received your polling card at the moment, and there'll be two different coloured papers. The white paper that you'll receive will be the family amendment. So that's the amendment that proposes to insert the words durable relationship. And then you'll get a green, and that is the care amendment. And that's the one that is going to remove the words mother and woman and the reference to women should not be forced by economic necessity to engage in labour outside the home. And that will be replaced with Article 42B. So I'm going to just go through, I think it's best to take them one at a time. So if we just start maybe with the care amendment. So this new Article 42B will state that the state recognises by the provision of care by members of a family to one another by reason of the bonds that exist among them, gives to society a support without which the common good cannot be achieved, and shall strive to support such provision. Now, we disagree that that provision should be put in because we think that the current article, which recognises the valuable work that mothers and women provide, is worthy of recognition and should be left. And we also think that it provides a very important safety net that has been used in court to ensure that women are not forced by economic necessity to work outside the home where they choose to remain at home. And that's really, really important, that where a woman chooses to stay at home with her children, she should be facilitated to do that. We are concerned that the article that's being presented, the care article, is being presented as something that will give additional rights to carers and to people with disabilities. And we believe that that is not accurate, that the wording in this is not enforceable because it uses the word strive. And it is clear to us from listening to disability rights activists like Tom Clonan, FLAC, Free Legal Aid, the Irish Council for Civil Liberties, Magdalenes for Justice, and the group Equality Not Care, that disabled people are not recognised in this new amendment. And what it does essentially is allow government to sidestep its obligations and places the responsibility of care firmly within the home. And we think that is sexist because we all know that the majority of care in those circumstances will be provided by mothers and by women. And it was the intention of the joint Oireachtas Committee on Gender Equality and on the Citizens' Assembly. They actually asked that the word support in the community would be inserted into that amendment, and it wasn't done, because that would allow people with disabilities as independent individuals with agency to say, I don't want to be cared for, I want to be cared about. And I want my care to take place outside of my family, independently, in the community, in a home of my own, and with supports that allow me to do that. And so Tom Clonan, who's a very passionate advocate for people with disabilities, has said that this was a missed opportunity and it could have done so much more. So I shall leave that, and just to say that we don't think there's anything sexist in saying that women are mothers. We don't think that that's a sexist thing. And if we were truly concerned about acknowledging care being equal, we would have inserted the words father and man, because men and fathers are very important in the provision of care, and they're very important in making families. But we chose not to do that. We've taken all of the sex-based language out and used this very vague term care. Care doesn't adequately reflect the relationship of a parent to a child, because care is not the same as mothering, and it's not the same as fathering. Now, just to the proposed amendment on the family. So we believe that this is, it's unacceptable to ask us to insert into the Constitution a phrase like durable relationship without knowing what that means. And Roderick O'Gorman, the Minister, has made it perfectly clear that they will not define this. It will be up to the courts to define what this term means. We do not believe it's the responsibility or the right of the judiciary to define a term after the fact. We are being asked to include this, as you say, in our founding document. We should know what it means before we do it. Our founder, Leisha de Bruin, is a barrister, and with many others, including the former Attorney General Michael McDowell, they have foreseen that this is going to cause legal chaos, because a durable relationship is being put on a similar footing as marriage, yet there are greater obligations on married people. You know when you get married, okay? It's outside of religion or outside of morals. It's a legal contract that you enter into with the state, essentially, because they give you your license. You get married, you have a date, and if it ends, you have a date when it finishes. And you cannot leave your marriage until you've made adequate provision for everyone who was involved in that marriage, including any children that came about as a result of it. And when the courts are happy that provision has been made for everybody, you can move on. Durable relationship won't operate in the same way. And we have concerns about things like consent. How do you know you're in a durable relationship? You could be in a relationship with someone who sees it as their forever relationship, and you don't, and you leave. Can they then enforce a durable relationship responsibility upon you? What impact will it have on inheritance, on taxation, on pension rights? And I'll just give you an anecdote. I was canvassing last week up in Artane, and two women, completely independent of each other, in their 60s, came up to me and they said, I have an adult daughter whose marriage has broken down and she's with another chap now, and he's a lovely guy and I have a lot of time for him, but I want my home to be left to my daughter and my grandchildren. What impact will durable relationship have on that wish? And I couldn't answer her, because it is unknown, and that is not acceptable. We should know. And Michael McDowell, in the period before the wording was agreed, there was an opportunity to amend and make improvements which were severely limited by government, and he asked that durable relationship would be defined by law, would be added in, and that was rejected. And it's really worth noting that neither of these amendments had what's called pre-legislative scrutiny, which is usually where a new law is brought to the Dáil and brought to the Seanad, and it's thrashed out, and you're given an opportunity to say, I think that's not going to work out very well, can we amend it here? That didn't happen. They had 3 hours to do the legislative scrutiny on these two amendments. There was no report, and when Senator McDowell asked for an FOI, there were meetings held between all of the departments that would be impacted by these amendments: social welfare, justice, and I was going to say revenue, but that's not a department. There's one other. It'll come to me. But they all came together, and they basically said, we can see the following things may happen. There's 16 pages of notes on that, and they weren't released under Freedom of Information. And the reason given was that if that was put into the public domain, it might change people's minds on how they vote. Now, if it's going to change people's minds on how they vote, I think it's actually worthwhile being given into the public domain, because it obviously says something that people need to hear. So we would have grave concerns about the way in which this has happened. How am I doing for time?
You're good, you're another 3 minutes.
Oh, goody. Okay. So just to say that there are some case law that are worth keeping in mind on this. So last month, a man called John O'Mara won a case in the Supreme Court. He's a man who he was with his partner for 20 years. She sadly passed away very suddenly last year, and they had 3 children together. He applied to get the widower's pension, and social welfare denied him that because they said that's only for married people. He went to the High Court and he lost, and then he appealed it and he went to the Supreme Court and he won. And he won on the basis that we cannot discriminate against any family in this country, because Article 40 says we are all treated equally and all children are treated equally regardless of the marital status of their families. Now that is going to have profound implications going forward, okay, that case. There's another case waiting to be heard. We will get the results, I think, on the 11th of April. A woman with a profoundly disabled son is basically trying to get her carer's allowance restored. It was taken away because her partner's threshold went up above the €45,000 threshold. She's lost it. Her son has Down syndrome, he has epilepsy, he doesn't sleep. She's on 24-hour duty with her child. And she's relying on Article 41.2, the one that says a woman should not be forced by economic necessity. She's relying on that article to have that carer's allowance reinstated. And if she is successful, that's going to have huge implications for all carers. The Supreme Court agreed to hear that in December, and within a month this referendum was called. And we do not think that that is a coincidence, and it should be held. The referendum should have been held after that case, the judgment on that case was given. So they're just 2 things to keep in mind. So just to round up, we believe that the wording on the family amendment is not sufficiently defined. Gerbil relationship is not sufficiently defined, and it will have implications. And families and the rights of individuals are already protected in the Constitution. It's not a moral judgment or a religious judgment. We accept there are many different types of family, but we could have done a lot better and had better wording. And with regard to care, women and mothers should not be removed from the Constitution. They're rarely mentioned anyway. There is nothing sexist about being a mother, nothing sexist about recognising the valuable unpaid work that mothers do, but we could have included fathers and men, and that would have made it more gender balanced. And people with disabilities are not going to get anything additional or have any better rights as a result of it. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, and yes, Suzanne, thank you very much for coming along. Suzanne Young from the Green Party.
Good evening, I should say. I'm not really a speaker. I have very little experience now public speaking, so you'll give me hopefully be kind and give me some time to get my head together here on this. So thank you very much for everyone actually explaining exactly what it is. I'm not going to go back through it again. I hope everyone is fairly clear on what the changes are. Obviously, I'm part of the Green Party, and we're very much advocating for a yes vote on this. And I am going to go through exactly why we believe that. I mean, overall, the 2 amendments, I feel they're just really broadening the scope. They're not actually taking away any rights from anybody. What is there at the moment is very limited, and particularly in terms of the family. So what it does is it's broadening the definition of a family to include gerbil relationships. We can all imagine examples of relationships. We have single parents. My own brother and his partner, they're not married. They've been together nearly 20 years now. I would certainly consider them a family. I have friends who are unmarried and have children and teenagers, and they're families. They're together as long as any of them. And why a piece of paper? And I'm not saying that marriage isn't important, and is very much I'm married myself and very committed to my own family and my husband. But I also respect that other people make different choices. And I don't believe our constitution should dictate to people what determines a family. I think we live in an inclusive world these days, and we need to acknowledge, and in fairness, legislation already does acknowledge these families. Cohabiting couples are already in legislation, are single parents, and we have legislation already to cover that. Really what we need to do is our constitution is actually just behind the times. It's old, it's been around a long time, and these articles need to be updated to represent our values and our principles in society. And the legislation, you have to be. I think a lot of people get mixed up between what's legislation and what's constitution. Constitution is not legislation. You don't have pre-legislative scrutiny on the constitution. It's not. You have pre-legislative scrutiny on legislation. When we, for example, when we brought in we repealed the 8th Amendment, there's no restrictions in the Constitution now on whether or not you can have abortion, okay? But you don't have people going at 8 months pregnant being able to get abortion, because legislation is brought in, and that's where the detail comes in. You don't put the detail into the Constitution, you put the detail into legislation. At the moment, our Constitution is actually behind the times, and we need to catch it up. So that's really on the family. I mean, durable relationships, I know people have concerns about that wording, but if we kind of try and work backwards from that, I mean, for example, how do you describe the relationship between, a mother and child, and the relationship between a couple who are unmarried, and have that all encompassing under the same wording? It's very difficult to have a general word that will actually include everything, it's not just that it has to be inclusive of everything we can imagine now, but also into the future, because the Constitution is not just for today, it's for, these articles are in there since 1937, so they have to be durable and they have to be flexible. So the other one on care, I find the reaction to it has been quite unfortunate. I think it came out of trying to remove the sexist language, and it is sexist because, and I'm not just saying that as a judgment, I'm saying that as, by definition it's sexist. If you assign roles and responsibilities and duties to a woman and not a man or anybody else, then that's inherently sexist. So, what it says is, by, her, to the neglect of her duties in the home. I mean, we've all been out to work. I'm like, oh, by going out to work, am I neglecting my duties in the home? By being here tonight, am I neglecting my duties in the home? No one's saying that my husband going out to work is neglecting his duties in the home. So why am I neglecting mine? It's just wrong. We really need, it's so behind the times. I mean, even back in, when the Constitution was initially being written, women were outside protesting. Back in the 1930s, they were protesting against this wording, because even then they considered it wrong, and didn't reflect progressive ideals at the time, and now I can't understand why anyone would consider it appropriate to bring in the care, the changes to the care amendment. So sorry, just bring up the exact wording here. So it really doesn't add anything, it doesn't take away any rights from anybody, because, and this has come out of, this has been assessed by the Law Society. In fact, if you go on to Marie Baker, Justice Marie Baker, she is the chair of the Referendum Commission, and she has been doing every day in RTE, every Monday on RTE Morning Ireland. She has been doing a piece where she's been answering questions on the referendum, and absolutely fantastic, incredibly informative, She's an absolute expert on the Constitution. Now, I would absolutely recommend everyone go back and read it. Each segment is only about 7 or 8 minutes long. It's well worth listening to. But at worst, the Care Amendment will be ineffective. At best, it adds an additional obligation on the state to actually provide support for carers. This amendment has nothing to do with disability rights. It has nothing to do with people who require care. This is about the carers themselves. This is about the government providing support for carers to give respite care, to provide additional. Now, it's not going to put an obligation. It's not going to suddenly change, childcare or provide loads of extra support, because you have a separation of powers in this country. So the courts can't oblige the government to use funds to give one group more funds than another. It's just not how the system works, and it never was. And I mean, people are saying that, if we bring in this amendment in, suddenly they'll be taking away childcare, or we'll take away Social Security. And I'm going, yeah, after this they could, but they could do that now. I mean, there just is no connection really between the two. But it's about our fundamental values, and what it does do is it puts an obligation on the state, and they could, they could be tested on that. At the moment, Shall Endeavour doesn't really give us anything, but actually Strive is stronger. It actually is a case of, we must get better. That is really what it means. So there's been a lot of, as I said, misinformation going around about things like polygamy. Again, not an issue. It's against criminal law in Ireland, and marriage, even in the Constitution, is only recognised between two people. What else is it not about? It's not it's not about taking away people's supports. If anything, hopefully it will encourage the government to provide extra supports. And immigration was the other one that came up. Again, a complete red herring. It will have absolutely no impact on immigration, none whatsoever. Just to be really, really clear about that. It can't. Again, the Constitution does have absolutely no. That's very much a state-led decision, and legislation is set, and EU legislation determines how we manage our borders. So I hope that is clear. How much time do we have?
You've 30 seconds left.
Okay, I'll leave it at that, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to press stop now on this.